We're talking today with Mr. Leo Zimmerman of Grand Rapids, Michigan, and the interviewer is James Smither of the Grand Valley State University Veterans History Project. Now, Mr. Zimmerman, can you start us off by giving us some background on yourself? To begin with, where and when were you born?
I was born in Grand Rapids on National Avenue, 1920.
All right.
December 7th.
Okay. And did you grow up in Grand Rapids?
Yes.
Okay. What did your family do for a living then?
Then?
Yeah.
My father worked at John Ball Park Zoo, or John Ball Park, I guess.
Okay, he was working at the park?
Yeah. He worked there. He also run a streetcar, and he also worked in a blacksmith shop.
I mean, actually, for like
That's where he
horseshoes
got
and...
his automobile experience.
Okay. Yeah, so in the 20s and 30s, what kind of work did you do in a blacksmith shop?
They were repairing automobiles.
Okay.
That's the only place that they had to repair automobiles in the 20s was a blacksmith shop.
Now, were blacksmiths still doing things like horseshoes too at that time, or were the horses gone?
Horses are more or less gone
Okay.
at that time.
All right. Now, was your father able to kind of keep working all through the 30s?
Yes.
Okay.
Well, he eventually went to work for an Auburn cord dealer up on Wealthy Street up there, pretty near the Eastern. And he worked there quite a few years. It went bankrupt in around 1930,
Okay.
somewhere there.
All right.
And he hadn't been paid in about 6 months, and so the owner, a real nice gentleman, gave him the tools from the shop for his pay, which turned into a wonderful thing for him and for his family, of course, because he had an opportunity to go to work for the American Boxboard Company repairing their trucks, because one of the stockholders and Wheel there in American Boxboard was his customer. Because he had an Auburn automobile, and his name was Fred Bither. I can remember Fred real well. And it was through him that my dad got to work at the American Boxboard up, work on their trucks. And eventually the whole family got into it.
Okay. Now, how many kids were in the family?
Let's see. There was five. There was four of us boys and my sister, and we lost a young one, a year-old baby.
And then did the rest of you all learn mechanics and how to fix things and all of that?
Yeah.
All right. Now, did you finish high school?
Yes, I finished high school.
Okay. And when did you graduate?
39.
39. Yep. All right. And then after you finished high school, were you working with your dad, or what were you doing?
Working with my dad. I actually started when I was 15 years old, after school and Saturdays.
All right.
Working at the shop.
Okay. Now, before Pearl Harbor happened, were you, Germany was at war, Europe was at war, but America was not. Were you paying any attention to the news of the world, or did you just worry about yourself? Yeah.
I wasn't.
Okay. Now, do you remember how you heard about Pearl Harbor?
How I heard about it?
Yeah.
At work one day, I heard about it on the radio. We always had a radio going. My younger brother was quite a radio enthusiast. I'm kind of glad of it because I liked it too. I still do.
All right. And then once you found out about that, did you consider enlisting, or did you think you'd wait for the Army to find you?
No, I didn't. I didn't even think about it. To tell you the truth, I wasn't interested, and probably for another couple of years before it dawned on me that it's time for me to get into this mess. And but I says I'm going to wait till they draft me, because I got married in 41, and my daughter was born in 42, and so I waited till the draft came,
Okay.
and I could have got deferred because of my work, but
Now,
I
at this,
said, I've got to do this.
okay. Now, were you still working for the same company that your father worked for, or did you have a different job?
My father had worked into a independent
Mm-hmm.
shop,
Right.
business of his own at that time.
Mm-hmm.
But it was still affiliated with the American Box Board because we was repairing their vehicles.
Okay. And so, what kind of job did you have that had a deferment with it?
Fixing those trucks. It was the American Box Board was making paper
Mm-hmm.
boxes that were waterproof.
Mm-hmm.
They had asphalt in them, and they made out of straw. And those they could drop these boxes out of airplanes into the water, and they wash ashore, and they'd still be they'd still be intact,
Okay.
waterproof.
Now, see, I didn't even know we had things like that.
Didn't
So you're first person. So there.
I'll be jiggered.
Learn some, but basically, you were doing something that was essential to the
Oh, yeah, it
military.
was
So,
essential.
yeah. Okay. But when the draft notice came, then you didn't worry about the deferment. You just said, "Okay, I'll go."
I'll go.
Okay. So when did you get your draft notice?
Oh boy.
Kind of late '43. Was that it, or?
Yeah, it was late '43. Yeah, I also in the middle of '43 there I had a major operation,
Mm-hmm.
and I could have got deferred from that too if I'd wanted to. And as a matter of fact, the recruiter got mad at me down in Detroit
Mm-hmm.
because it was an ugly scar.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, it was about 3 months before that. And I says, that it might look ugly, but it is nothing wrong with it. I'm
Mm-hmm.
perfectly fit,
Yeah.
and I want to get this over with.
Mm-hmm.
And it was the Army man, or the Navy man.
Mm-hmm.
And the Navy, I said, I don't want to be on no ship. And he said, what's the matter with the Navy? I said, I just don't like it. I ain't no swimmer or nothing. and so he got kind of teed off at me and boom, put the papers over on the Army's desk
Mm-hmm.
over there. They took me gradually.
Right.
Reluctantly, they didn't like the
Scar either, but
you know,
okay.
but I assured them it was all right.
All right. Now, where did they send you first once you had been drafted?
Camp Hood, Texas.
All right.
At that time, it was a camp.
Yeah, it's Fort Hood now, but it was Camp Hood
Yeah.
then. Right. How did they get you down there?
Train.
What do you remember about that train trip?
That was a miserable trip from here to Chicago. Stopped about 15 times. And from Chicago on, not too bad till we got to, let's see, where was it? Somewhere in Texas.
Mm-hmm.
I think it was Waco. And then we took a cattle car with, with the stoves on each end of it,
Mhm.
heat, coal stoves, to Fort Hood,
Mm-hmm.
or Camp Hood.
Yep.
And then, but Camp Hood now, they had a north camp, and that was nothing but tar paper barracks.
Mm-hmm.
You could
Yeah.
you could throw a cat through the side wall.
Did you have to go to that side of the camp?
Mhm.
All right.
That was the tank destroyer. It was a tank destroyer company,
Okay.
a training company.
Right. Now, now the term tank destroyer in World War II got used for a couple of different things. There were towed anti-tank guns, and there were also tank chassis that had a bigger gun on top.
Mm-hmm.
They open-topped M10s and then other kinds. What kind of equipment were you training with?
We were training with M10s
Mm-hmm.
and M60s tanks.
Well, the M60 tank.
It was that was a real small tank with a radial engine in the rear, capable of 60 mile an hour on them old dirt tracks down there in Texas.
Okay. Now that might have been. Let's see. 'Cause
It only had a 75 millimeter gun on it.
Yeah, well, there was a tank that was nicknamed the Chaffee, which might have been an M24
Don't know.
and 36. But anyway, but there was a newer light. It was not the old Stuart light tank. It was a fast cavalry tank, but with a 75.
Yes,
Yeah,
with
okay.
a 75 millimeter gun. However, we didn't get a lot of training with that.
Mm-hmm.
It was hit and miss with that.
Yep.
Mostly it was like infantry training.
Right. Yeah. Describe a little bit what the training you got when you first got to camp. What did they have you do?
Oh, first get a bunch of shots. It seemed like you run around naked half the time because they want to inspect this and inspect that, and they were quite thorough in shots and things. And from then on, though, after that initial break-in of that type of a life, I guess you'd call it, with 130 other people, you know, in a barracks. Training, you know, manual training and infantry training, bayonet training, hiking, sleeping out in the woods and such as that.
All right. Did they put a lot of emphasis on discipline, following orders?
Oh man, yes, yes, sir. Yeah, discipline was number one.
Now, how easy or hard was it for you to adjust to life in the Army?
Not too bad, not too bad. I kind of fell into it because outdoor man all my life. I started young, probably 10, 12 years old, running a trap line and out in the woods and carrying a gun and whatnot.
Yeah. But how about the discipline part? Follow orders, do what you're told.
It wasn't hard for me. It wasn't hard. I could do that real good.
You've been working a long time, so.
Yeah. I've been working quite a while.
Okay. Now, were some of the guys you were training with, did they have more trouble than you did?
Yeah.
What sort of problems would you see?
Discipline. Discipline problems. One in particular was Isidore Weiss. He just couldn't conform. However, he got by with it because he had brought his taxi with him from St. Louis, 7-passenger Plymouth taxi, and of course North Camp Hood was in a dry county. Therefore, our captain and through 2 or 3 of the lieutenants confiscated him and his cab to bring their booze in from another county. Captain Lovely, his name was. I can remember him real good.
All right. So you have sort of, do you have like 8 or 12 weeks of that basic training, and then you get more advanced stuff?
It was about 16 weeks.
Okay. So you do that for a few months, and then after that, do they start training you with the tank destroyers? Is that the next step?
No.
Okay.
They sent me to a wheeled vehicle school
Okay.
at the main camp.
Okay. Now, how was the main camp different from North Camp Hood?
Oh, much nicer. Nicer barracks, decent living conditions, and was capable of having my wife join me for that 3 months. We lived out at a little town of Copper's Cove, just west of the area, and in a little apartment out there.
How would you get into the base?
How did we get into it?
Yeah, well, I mean, did you? Was there a bus, or did you walk, or?
No, we didn't walk. One of our persons there with us, Harry Strong, his name was, had a Plymouth coupe. And, no, Dodge coupe, I guess. And it was a coupe.
Yep.
and he would finagle a pass to get out, and three of us in a trunk, turtleback of that,
Yeah.
and one in the front, could get back and forth
Okay.
from Copper's Cove to the main base.
All right. Now, when you were learning vehicle maintenance, what kind of vehicles were you training with or working on?
There was wheeled vehicles. That was trucks and jeeps and
Weapons carriers and
yeah, weapon carriers and the whole shooting match, and a little half track training and motorcycle training. We tore them apart and put them together and learned to ride them. I never could master that.
Okay. Now, were most of the guys you were training with people with backgrounds like yours? They'd been working on cars or trucks or things, or were some of them having to learn all of it?
Oh, some of them had to learn it all, and some of them didn't. There were three or four that was very knowledgeable about automobiles and trucks and things, and but overall, it was pretty darn good. I met up with them again once in the Philippines.
All right.
Otherwise, we got separated.
Okay. Now, when did you finish that vehicle training? Have we made it into the spring of 44, or are we middle of 44?
That'd be about October, November, probably November
Okay.
of 44.
All right. So you basically, so let's see now, you had mentioned earlier on that you were in the tank destroyer training area. Okay. Now, was there a point when you were working with those? Did you learn to fix tank destroyers or tracked vehicles, or did they just move you away from that area down to?
They moved me away from that to the wheeled vehicle school.
Okay.
Yep.
All right. And so you finished. So that school takes a while
Oh
to
yeah.
get through.
Yeah, it's kind of a little bit tied together, but not entirely.
All right. Now you said your wife was with you for what, about 3 months? Was that right? Okay. And then, did she go home because they were shipping you overseas, or? Okay.
That's true. Yeah.
All right.
That's what it was all about.
Now, before you got sent overseas, did they let you go home?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, I was home for a week
Okay. And do you
on
remember?
the way.
Okay.
To Newport News, Virginia.
All right. So they give you a little bit of leave time. You can
Or-
stop at home. Yeah.
Well,
Newport. Well, Norfolk or Newport News is that area.
No, it wasn't that. It was.
Did you go to sail out of New York or New Jersey?
Fort, in Maryland.
Okay.
Uh,
Fort Meade or.
Meade.
There you
Fort
go.
Meade, Maryland. Yeah.
All right.
Oh yeah. Yeah. That was what. But instead of sending me overseas, they said you got to have some more training, infantry training. So they sent me to Fort Jackson, South Carolina, for 6 weeks of infantry training.
Now, was that any different from what you already had?
No, very similar. So I had two really infantry trainings actually.
Okay.
Basic training.
Right. You got infantry basic training again. Yeah. Well, that was a point there, kind of getting on in 44. They needed more infantrymen more than other things.
Yes.
And some of the specialized training programs were all shutting down, and they're putting more guys in the infantry.
Yep.
So that must have been what caught you.
That's what caught me. Yeah.
All right. So you go down to South Carolina. So when do they finally send you to Europe then?
Well, after 6 weeks there,
Okay.
I came back to Newport News, I think it was, and shipped out for Italy.
Okay. And do you remember when that was? About what month or?
It was December
Okay.
because we landed in on Christmas Day in Naples.
Okay. So early December then of 44, you're loading up. All right. What kind of ship did they put you on?
Oh boy, I don't know. Just a troop ship, I guess. But it was a terrible trip. 13 days of sickness. I was seasick terribly. And I can remember about the 10th day. Hadn't eaten for quite a while. I was standing guard it had to stand guard on fantail. I don't know what for, but there was a 5-inch gun back there. I can remember crawling up and sitting in the seat with my rifle, and something happened. I don't know. I must have fainted or passed out, and woke up in sick bay. But let me tell you, there's about 4 decks, and I'm on the top one. My nose is about a foot away from the whitest ceiling I've ever seen in my life. You know what was going through my mind? I'm not a religious person, but I was scared to death. Honest to God, they couldn't have scared me anymore if somebody had held a gun to my head.
All right. Now, did you ever get over the seasickness, or did you just have to land?
Yes.
Okay.
They issued me, they filled me up with liquids, and then they issued me a pass to the ship galley to get anything I want to eat, mostly fruit.
Right.
And I ate a lot of fruit the last 3 days, and I survived that episode.
Now, was the weather bad, or would you just have been sick anyway?
No, the weather wasn't that bad. Really, it wasn't. However, when you ate, it was long tables across the ship, and we stood up, and you had to hold on to your
tray.
mess kit, or it would. Those last 3, I didn't eat much before that, but the last 3 days I did eat and drank some stuff. That was one small episode. I've put plenty of time on. That was only 13 days on that ship to Naples.
Yep.
But from then on, I've had some doozies.
Right. Okay.
You'll hear about them.
Now, were there any U-boat scares or things like that on that trip?
Pardon?
Well, did you have any U-boat scares or
No.
things like that? No.
No.
Yeah, they were pretty much done by then.
Yeah.
Okay.
We was escorted all the way.
Right. And then did you zigzag back and forth and change course?
Oh, yeah,
that
they
whole thing.
zigzag, yeah.
Okay. Now, do you remember going through the Straits of Gibraltar, or were you still?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, we seen the big rock at Gibraltar. We was that close.
Right. Okay. And then they come and they land you at Naples. All right. And what was it like to get ashore there?
Felt good. That was wonderful. That's one of a couple of different times that I'll tell you about. But yes, that was wonderful to get onto dry land.
Okay. Now, what condition was the city and the port in when you got there? Were things up and running, or still kind of messed up?
Pretty decent. It wasn't bad. It wasn't bad at all. We moved into this replacement depot in Caserta, I think.
Yeah. Okay.
Santa Maria or Caserta, or maybe been between them.
All right. You go into a replacement depot, and then how long did you spend there?
Oh boy. Till the war ended.
You never got out of it? No.
The war ended in Europe. That was May the 8th of 45.
5, yeah.
Yeah.
So you were in the replacement depot for the whole time?
Yes. Doing these driving duties.
Okay. Describe that. What kind of duties did you get assigned once you got there?
Oh my gracious. Well, one of them was they called it detail, they took us down in a truck down to the Mediterranean, I think, in a big LST there, dumped out a bunch of mules. And of course, they using mules. The Germans were using horses up in the mountains.
Right.
And mules was going to come in handy. And there was, I think, maybe 20 of us. Each one of us tended to a mule. We walked about 8 or 9 miles with the mule. and we had to stay overnight. We had to sleep with a mule and tend to him. We had to load him with his own food and unload him, and so he could rest like the rest of us, I suppose. That was one of the episodes, just overnight, and maybe we made, I really don't know the distance it was, but it was quite a long time walking. Then the next time that I've got a detail was driving a truck.
Okay. And where did you drive to, or what were you driving?
Oh, 6x6, old GMC with
Right.
let's see, 302, inline 6-inch cylinder engine. Oh, that old baby would scream, climbing mountains. At night, at blackout, following a couple of little lights, the tail lights ahead of you.
Okay.
And we had a gunner,
So you had like a 50 caliber machine gun?
50 up there, you know, and with us, and he'd only once that we had to use him, but it was scary because it got daylight before we reached a destination, which was the other side of the Po Valley where the fighting was.
Now, were you driving trucks all the way from Naples all the way up there? Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, because that's still a big place for landing supplies. So you're moving supplies north
Moving
and south.
supplies
Okay.
up there.
But that's a long drive. How
Oh,
long?
it's a heck of a long drive. We was gone 2 days.
Yeah.
You know, and well, we got strafed that one time, and the old gunner, he I was kidding him. You know, I says, maybe we better bail out of this thing, get in the ditch. He says, no, he'd been through it before, I hadn't. He says, those Krauts know where you're hiding in that ditch. They may not be shooting at your truck. They may be shooting in the ditch. I didn't know that, of course. That was new to me.
Now, did you do most of the driving at night, or would you?
Yes.
Okay. Because you were afraid German aircraft might come over and see you, or?
We camouflaged it. Yeah, they'd come over. We'd have to, because it's like you say, it was a long trip.
Yeah, yeah.
And really, I got up there one time. Of course, we were in the back of the fighting, but it was a nice. We had to stay there overnight, of course. We'd go through a tent. We get deloused. You shed all your clothes, get deloused, and then showered. And then the next step was clean clothes. New boots or different boots.
Right.
And set all up again for your trip back.
Now,
We
did you
didn't have very good accommodations. We had to sleep on the ground, but
All right. Now, what do you remember about when you got up toward the war zone and up toward the Po Valley in that area?
the surroundings,
Yeah, what was the area like? And
it was mountainous, small villages. Some of them we went through small villages. It's quite scenic up there.
was it dangerous to drive a truck up there?
Well, yes, those trucks anyway, because climbing the mountain, we was in creeper gear and the old thing was just screaming, you know, and going down, you were hoping that the brakes would hold out, you know, and then the bridges, let's see. Oh, I think there was only 2 bridges. Arno River and the Po. We crossed on pontoon. And wobbliest things. Well, you know, the engineers, they'd laugh at you. See, they would only let one truck across at a time, but and they say, you get to the other side and you probably was white you know, or if they could see you, because most of it was at dark, but or even sick from the rocking.
Yeah. Now, were you normally traveling with a whole convoy of trucks, the whole line?
Yeah, there must have been 15, 20 of them or more.
And did you see accidents happen? Like trucks fall
Once
off
in
the
a
road?
while, they'd blow a tire or something, but the roads were terrible. Even the mountain roads were, you know, you had to go around the mountain, and they're narrow. It wasn't fun. It was scary at times.
But you probably got pretty good at it after a while.
Yeah, well, I bet you, I don't know how many trips I'd made. I really can't remember that. It seemed like it was at least a half a dozen that I'd made.
Yeah. Now, when you weren't on one of these details driving trucks, how did you spend your time?
Training. Learning to shoot a 50 caliber at a remote controlled plane, or training, parading. They was big on parades, and manual of arms and things of that sort. They were big on that stuff.
Right. Now, did you have to put on any shows or demonstrations for big officers, or were you just doing this to just fill time?
No.
Okay. Now, were a lot of men coming and going out of there?
Yes.
But you were staying.
They kept me there for some reason. I think because of what my records must have showed. I had been to welding school here at Davis Tech downtown here, at night school. I'd taken a welding course and things of that helped me later on. I'll tell you about that too. But I don't know. I'm trying to recollect what that was like. We had a lot of free time to go into Naples and to Pompeii to study history a little bit.
Right.
You know.
Yeah. What kind of attitude did the Italian civilians have toward you? You're going to
Very
these places.
good. Very good. They were, well, you know, we'd make sorties up in training, up into the mountains, into the vineyards and stuff. And the families up there were very friendly. Invite you to meals, things of that sort. Ate rabbit up there, drank their wine, carried their wine in our canteen instead of water.
Would you trade things with them? Would you give them cigarettes or that kind of stuff? Or
we sold cigarettes, black market. I didn't smoke, but they were continually giving us tools, and so I did sell them. Yeah, it was. I can remember that was $30 a carton. Think of that, $30 a carton. And 8-year-old kid with a wad of money, that American money, paying $30 for a carton of cigarettes. He in turn would given that to the fascists, probably. I don't know, or could have been German too.
Well, or just to, you had what we would call mafia in
Yeah,
place. There was a lot of stuff going on in the black market and everything, and so that's probably just the local economy.
That's probably it.
Whoever was there, but
and now these that was tough to see these urchins, I'd call them. I've seen them in the Philippines the same, but they're in Italy. 8, 9-year-olds, young fellers like that. How do I word that? They had sisters and mothers at home that would entertain you.
Yeah. And some of that was just the economy, sort of how you survived.
Economy.
Yeah.
Naples was really a wicked place.
Mm-hmm.
I guess you could put
Now,
it.
did they give you warnings, or say things to do and not do, or and that sort of stuff there, try to keep you safe or at least healthy? Yeah.
One of them was in a bar. If you're questionable about the drinks, there's stone floors. You pour a little on the ground first and light a match. If it burned a good blue color, drink it.
Mm-hmm.
If it didn't, leave it alone. And inspect each bottle to see that it hadn't been altered, especially the bottom.
Mm-hmm.
They could cut the bottom out and replace it. Have the name on the top, you know, would be there, and
Yep.
so they taught us things that
So you were getting an education and a lot more things than
Absolutely.
you expected. Yeah.
absolutely, and I was thankful for that. I mean, that was nice. I mean, I had no qualms about that kind of stuff.
All right. So you're still there. We get to May the 8th, and at that point, Germany has surrendered. Now, how long did you stay in Italy after that?
Oh boy, how long? Golly.
Probably not too long.
They transferred me right to an Ordnance Company.
Mm-hmm.
When the war ended,
Okay.
and well, there was a lot of ceremonies ahead of that, but they look. Let's see, how did that go? We got onto a ship, and they took us up to Leghorn on the water, an Italian ship. With the toilet facilities was a wooden sluice on the deck.
Okay.
That sounds like Italian, didn't it? Huh? Anyways, just overnight, we slept on deck, and probably 14, 15 maybe of us joined this Ordnance Company in a town of Monacatina, small resort town with the most marvelous hotel, all intact, with beds, with mattresses to sleep on.
So that's where the company was quartered?
Pardon?
The company you joined was quartered up there? Okay.
That's where they were. It's 109th Ordnance Company. And each room in that hotel had a bath, a full bath, with a bidet and all. Stars and Stripes, you know, the magazine, the Army magazine. I don't remember the name of the illustrator, probably. I don't remember who it was. Shows Sad Sack with his foot on the bidet, water coming up. He's brushing his teeth. Oh, I never forget that as long as I live. That was the most comical thing I'd ever seen, you know? Oh, that was fun.
Well, Americans still don't know what to do with those. So, that's not so surprising. But kind of a switch from the wooden things on the boat to that sort of facility.
Yes, yes.
Well, how long did you actually stay there?
I don't think we was there too long. Maybe about 2 weeks,
Okay.
I would say. We were in that, and it was enough time for me to go on into town, and of course I'm interested in power plants and things of this sort, mechanical stuff. They had an old diesel that was making electricity, driving a generator, you know, and it was a putt button that would go off at a certain time at night and come back on in the morning. But it was a quaint village. It's a beautiful place. Oh, the surroundings were just That is a real resort town. And they took us. Then we got on a ship at Leghorn, Italy. It was the ship USS South America.
Okay.
South America, a big one. Our whole Ordnance Company got on that ship. A deck up here in midship. We had the nicest quarters of anybody in the world. About 8 men to a room with our own shower. It was sometimes salt water, but sometimes it was fresh water. But that ship took on, it's 1,800 of us in this Ordnance Company. There's 4,000 colored people in the decks below. 2, 3, 4 decks, I think. So there's 4,000 of them. We would get to see them, because at that time I was still a private. Doing detail work. We had to go down them 3 or 4 decks to get food out of the freezer and whatnot. And there was lots of fights. Rumors, of course, about the knifings, and 3 or 4 they playing cards and get into a fight down there, and the morgue had 3 or 4 people in, and things of that sort. But it's here we are up here living the life of Riley.
Yeah.
It was quite a trip though. Down through, back out through the Straits of Gibraltar, the Atlantic, to the Panama Canal. Got to the Panama, and they let us off. And into an enclosure, though. It was a big fence. It was outdoors, but it was a large fenced in enclosure. We, they served, not beer, soft drinks and stuff of that sort. And maybe we was there 2 or 3 hours off the ship. I guess to get your legs.
Yeah.
However, I was never sick a minute. That's being up there in the middle of the ship, and got back on, went about short distance, there's a freshwater lake. So they took on a whole supply of fresh water, which we had for maybe 3 or 4 days after that, heading out towards the Philippines. And that trip was 42 days long.
Yeah. Now, was the ship sailing by itself, or were you still okay?
All by itself. Got no escorts of any kind. Either way, either in the Atlantic or the Pacific.
So even when you were getting close to the Philippines, it was still just you sailing by yourselves. Okay.
No.
Now, was the ship a fast enough ship that they didn't think they had to worry about?
I don't know. I really don't know. We never thought much about it. We crossed the equator. I remember they made a big deal out of that for some reason. I don't know why, but they do. It was, I suppose interesting. I don't know.
Now, did you have the black troops with you the whole time, or did they let them off in the States?
The what?
The black troops who were in the hold of the ship.
They're still in the
with
hold.
you. Okay.
They're still in the hold. We come into Manila Harbor, in the harbor at Manila, and no, I can't say that. I don't really know where we come in, but I do know this. We got off that ship on rope ladders. We had like a landing was going to be. And it was. That's just exactly what it was all about. But we had to go down the rope ladder with all our gear. We had to put all our gear on our back with a rifle and the whole shooting back. Steel helmet and all. And the waves were 4 and 5, 6 feet high in that landing craft down there. is just like a bobber. You had to time your drop. And I wasn't really worried about this landing business because they issued me one clip of ammunition for my rifle.
Mm-hmm.
One clip. Oh, this is going to be a cakewalk, you know, nothing to that. They didn't know that there's 7 or 8 more in my pack. It's always been there. anyways, got into a landing craft, and I'm in the 3rd or 4th wave. 3.5 hours in that landing craft. We all had to hit the beach at once.
Mm-hmm.
It was all show. But I was sick for them 3 hours so bad, it was terrible. But I wasn't the only one. Even the 2 sailors, it's running this landing craft, they were heaving just like the rest of us because that thing was just like a bobber.
So
That little landing craft, what is it, 30 or 40 feet long, and it's just like it's terrible.
they said it was all for show. Was someone filming this, or why were they going through all of this? You weren't doing a real invasion.
Newsreel pictures.
Yeah.
Newsreel pictures. I found. Can I get up from here?
Yeah.
A minute. Here, I want to show you. I'll show you something.
I had paused the camera here. We won't be able to see that very well on here, but just tell us what that's a picture of.
That's a picture of us after we had landed, and my mother wrote on here, "We think you must be in this someplace," and she was right. But of course, there's 5,800 troops
Right.
doing this exercise, and there wasn't a Jap within 10 miles of that place.
Right.
They put us on railroad cars and run us into Manila. But she wrote here, it was in the Grit paper. Of course, you don't remember that, but I remember. I used to sell them.
Oh, I remember those.
When I was a kid. Yep. And she wrote. She sent that to me. And because we were the part of the 4,200 troops, it says 4,200 to here. I thought it was more than that, but whatever. Transferred to the Philippines from Leghorn, Italy. These GIs line up at Manila after 40 days at sea.
Okay.
While some of the men griped at not getting home before being shipped to the Pacific, most accepted it as one of the tough breaks of global war.
Does that have a date on it?
No.
So when do you think you got there? What time of year or what month? So July maybe, or I don't think, because the war ends in Europe in May. You're there for a few more weeks. 40 days probably puts you close to the end of the war with Japan by then.
Yeah, it would be. I really can't tell.
Okay.
I can't remember.
All right. Now, once you did land, what did they do with you?
They said we went right into Manila and set up a camp in a churchyard, Catholic churchyard. A little bit of history there too, oh boy. We started putting up 5-foot high platforms, and we put tents on top of those. And wondering why 5 feet. We soon found out because when the rains came, we'd only go down 2 steps and we'd be in water. Such as that, you know, that was pretty tough. And we started servicing vehicles that were, well, I don't really know. I could have been the 125th Infantry Division. I'm not sure what that was.
It might have been a regiment. Divisions didn't get high in their numbers.
No. It was probably regiment, yeah. But these trucks we was having to service. They was using Filipino drivers, and they'd go out into the small provinces and get workers and bring them into Manila because Manila was bombed terribly. It was an awful mess. And those trucks would come, might start out with 8 wheels and tires, and they'd come back with 4 or 5, or enough to get by. And if you wrote the mileage down, I can remember this real good. On the truck before they left, they maybe only went 40 miles, but they wouldn't be a drop of that 50-gallon fuel tank would be empty. So they sold them or whatever they did. I don't know. One little episode about this camp that we'd set up in this churchyard. They'd put our mess tent off to one side there. There was a small mound in the back corner of it, and after all this rain came, that was up high enough. It was on the ground. That was on a little bit higher part of the churchyard there. It developed an awful smell, and come to find out that little small hump there was a grave site. And we found out from neighbors or natives, Filipino people, that the church had been bombed out. You know, they bury their people in the church, and the bones were everywhere. And then the people, some of the parish, I suppose, I don't remember now. Oh, I do. Yeah, the one young lady that was doing my laundry told me that the Japanese had killed, I can't remember the number, of nuns and priests, and they were buried there with a bulldozer. Had buried them. So of course we had to move the tent.
Yeah.
But we didn't stay there that long till they moved us up to Boang in northern Luzon. However, I did get to tour MacArthur's hacienda there in Manila.
How did you get there?
Pardon?
How did you get there?
With a Jeep.
Okay, but why were you there, or what were you? Did you have a mission?
Just sightseeing.
Okay.
Sightseeing. Had some free time, you know, so you just get out and do a little sightseeing.
Okay.
Roads were almost non-existent, but when we moved up to Boang, we set up on a crossroad. This little town, well, village, no town, village. We set up on this corner, and we were servicing the 125th Infantry Division, the division now.
But there was no 125th Division. There would have been a regiment.
A regiment.
Yeah.
Probably regiment or whatever.
Yeah.
And the vehicles we were servicing them, because they were traveling from the front where the fighting was going on in back into Manila. They were, and we was busy. I mean, those trucks were flying apart.
Well, the roads were mostly dirt roads, or
two
or
tracks,
all,
really.
Yeah. Okay.
Terrible.
Yeah.
Mud. Deep mud. And that's where I learned about Merle Howe. Being there, it was an old reel truck, well 6x6 with that. I hadn't seen any reels really. GMCs was all we'd seen before, but here they had some reels there, and we had to take the cylinder head off one of them, and the driver, of course, was staying over, and he said they lost the colonel. And of course I questioned him a little. Well, he slept in the tent there with me. We got to talking about it. And he told me this. I said, "What's the colonel's name?" And because I knew Merle was over there, and he told me it was Merle Howe. And that's why I thought that he was probably piloting that reconnaissance plane in there.
Can you explain a little bit about who this man was and how you knew him?
Merle?
Yeah.
Merle Howe was my shop teacher at Union High School. He taught the electric class. Most interesting man that you ever listened to. It was marvelous. We'd get him off onto. He was a World War I pilot, and he'd get him off onto those tales of what happened in World War I. Wow, some of the things it's hard to believe. But I found out from this driver. I didn't find out more until about 5 years, 7 or 8 years ago, that I went over to the new Union High School and they filled me in on all this different things about Merle Howe.
Because he was commander of the 126th Infantry Regiment.
Regiment.
And that was the unit that was out of Grand Rapids in West Michigan. And they were the guard unit. They'd gone They'd gone through New Guinea.
They went down to Louisiana to train.
Yep. Those guys, yeah, we did a whole documentary on them. But yeah, so that's 126 that was the number, and that was the regiment. They were part of the 32nd Division. Okay, but he was the regimental commander at the time he died. What was he doing when he died? What did you learn about that?
He was flying surrender papers into Yamashita, up in Baguio, and it's in those papers that I've got there. I didn't know about this. He didn't survive the crash, but the pilot did. That's how I found out he wasn't the pilot. It was just when I went to school down here and found out about that. But they buried him up there. And that's what these papers will, that Yamashita, that letter that he wrote. And he got in contact with the regiment headquarters and told them what had happened. And they were free to come and get his body. So they sent 12 men up there. They got lost. They didn't make it. When a week went by, and of course, they were off somewhere. I suppose they could keep in contact by phone. I'm not sure. So they sent another 12 men, and they were successful. And they found him and brought him back. And he's buried there. I see his wife's grave up down here at Chapel Hill. I walk by it when I go to see my sister's grave. And they got a note on that stone. Mrs. Merle Howe, wife of Merle Howe. Is it wrote on there about? I don't think it is. That he was buried. Yes, he's buried with his men in the Philippines.
All right. Now, how long do you think you stayed up in that northern area in the Philippines?
Oh boy!
Was that just a few more weeks or
Oh.
longer than that?
Until the war ended.
Yep.
Until the war ended. When then old Harry Truman dropped that bomb. Thank goodness for that old fella.
Now, did you hear about the bomb before you heard about the surrender, or did it all just kind of come together?
It all came together. For me, anyway.
Yeah. Now, at that point, were the Japanese up there still fighting? Was there?
Yes.
Did it take a while to?
Up there at Baguio, they were fighting yet. Yes.
Because I think when the colonel was taking the surrender papers up there, the surrender had already been signed in Tokyo Bay at that point.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Oh
so
yeah.
now it was just getting the Japanese who were still fighting to surrender, and those were some of the
But
last
he
ones.
was just trying to get Yamashita. He was trying to surrender papers into him.
Right.
because they had him cornered.
Mm-hmm.
He wasn't going to get away. But he was a very gracious gentleman.
Mm-hmm.
That's more than I can say for most of those Japanese.
Right. So not too long after that, in that incident, then you move out again. What do they do with your unit after
We stayed intact, and when we got to Japan,
that? Okay, so they sent you to Japan next.
yes,
Okay. And then where did they send you in Japan?
Nagoya.
Okay.
Nagoya. I got to tell you a little bit about that trip.
Yes.
Now that was really something. That trip. It was a James J. O'Hara, APA ship.
Okay. So
Whether they didn't pay any attention to the weather reports, I don't know. You know, this is supposed to be about a 3 to 4, maybe 5-day journey. Not too far, you know, from there to Japan. Well, we had rations enough for that. But we tangled with a typhoon, and we ended up over on the China coast by Taiwan, actually, and had to make our way back. The awful. I was too scared to be sick, I think, because it was terrific. We couldn't get up on deck for I don't know 20 days, I believe. We was on board that ship for 30 days because we got to Japan, a little town of Wakayama, and they let us go ashore. They anchored the ship out here, and they let us go ashore. Twice I went to shore, and the war's ended now. But this ship couldn't get into Nagoya Harbor because the harbor was still mined.
Okay. Now this tape is just about done. So talking about you had your typhoon voyage over to Japan. Now you said that you'd taken enough food on the ship to last you the few days, but you were on for 25. What did you do for food the rest of the time?
Red beans and cornbread. It seems the Navy lives on beans, and that's what we ate 3 times a day, and it was very nourishing. I still like it. I eat cornbread right regular.
So the Navy ship had its own stock of food besides the regular Army rations or whatever you had? Okay. So you survived that.
However, the crew was eating the same thing. The crew was I met a fella on that ship from Holland, Mich, Hank Baker. He used to run, I used to ride with him when we'd go fishing out on the South Pier down there. He'd take us out to the South Pier. Hank Baker, I didn't know it at the time, but I met him on that ship.
All right. Okay. See, but then, and then where did you land again? You got to Nagoya, or what? You said you stopped someplace else first in Japan?
Wakayama.
Okay.
And they let us go ashore until they got the harbor cleared.
Right.
We had to wait for a
Minesweeper?
Minesweeper, I suppose, coming from somewhere to clear that. We heard the explosions as they cleared it because we were that close to Nagoya, and we got in there and finally got off that ship, you know, and set up our Ordnance Company in a bombed out seaplane factory. One corner of it still had a roof over it, so we set up underneath it, and that's where we started servicing everything that a medium maintenance company would. There was let's see, how would that go? We didn't have food for a couple of days after we got ashore. We scrounged around and got vegetables from natives. But, boy. And then finally we got K rations. Finally, after a while. But we was there until I was there until the war ended.
Well, the war was
Or
over
the
when you
war
got
was
there.
already over, but I mean, toward my time to go home.
Mm-hmm.
And in the meantime, they finally started issuing me some stripes because I was doing a lot of work,
Mm-hmm.
I guess, and things of that sort. And one episode of my time there, my mother wrote to me and gave me my brother Max's address in Yokohama.
Mm-hmm.
He was in Yokohama. The 41st Division was up there.
Yep.
and I got permission to go. I got a pass
Mm-hmm.
to take the captain's jeep and go. And got down to the motor pool. They had it all tore apart. so we ended up with a weapons carrier, but I went up there and spent a couple of days with him.
How easy or hard was it for you to navigate the roads in Japan? How did you know where you were going?
I had a compass, and I knew the direction.
Mm-hmm.
The roads were very primitive, and especially in the villages. I actually knocked down a few tile roofs going through the villages. and poor Japanese come out screaming. And I had to bump one off on the side of the road in his cart because he wasn't getting out of the way, and I wanted to go a little faster. I got up there, and Brother Max, they were really preparing to leave for home. My brother Max is in a couple of years ahead of me.
Mm-hmm.
He'd been in the infantry a long time, and he says, Bob Wagner, a fella, one of his comrades, says, Max, my brother's name was Max. Max, show him your helmet. Oh, Mac digging around in his duffel bag, and here he's got a helmet with a crease down it. Right at the end of the crease was a crack, but the bullet ricocheted. Bob says, that dumb brother of yours didn't know enough to keep his head down. But he says, it all turned out right, because he says that sniper kept right on firing, and I seen the
Muzzle flash. Yeah.
and he says he come tumbling down out of there like a dead bird.
Mm-hmm.
And but Max was going to bring that. They made him turn it in.
Mm-hmm.
He couldn't bring it home. But I stayed there that night with him. We stayed up all night chewing the fat and drinking beer. We was having a good time because they were leaving the next day.
Wow. Okay.
And he got home, of course, ahead of me.
Right. Now, did you have guys in your unit who were leaving ahead of you?
Yes, a lot of them.
That's probably part of why you kind of moved up in rank, because you were taking over their jobs,
That's
and
right.
now you were
I
the
was
veteran.
taking them jobs over. Yeah. One job in particular was the welding section that I got, and that's what gave me another stripe because I was having to run this welding section,
Right.
and because the welding, they read my dope sheet, I suppose. It seemed that I'd been to welding school,
Right.
and not knowing that welding school involved this welding section of this Ordnance Company, in one of the main jobs was repairing radiators. If you can weld, you can solder, according to them. I never had that much experience, but I learned on the job learning. It really is what it amounted to. And but I had two Japanese on my crew, and very sharp individuals. They'd been working in this seaplane factory, and they knew aluminum welding inside and out. And they taught me how to weld with aluminum. I didn't get that in school.
Yeah.
And however, I put them to work building a ramp. We had to build a ramp to service trucks on, and it had to be three foot something high and long. We used 6-inch channel iron and welded them together to make a track, and I had those two Japanese fellas doing that welding. We had our own welder, and ended up we had to pay for that steel. They finally come down there one day with the captain did, come along with a Japanese guy with a clipboard. I had to estimate how many not board feet, whatever square feet of steel we used that was Japanese. We had to pay them for it. But that's the way that turned out. But I learned how to solder radiators on that episode. 'Cause, boy, bullet holes. Even there, I mean, there's stuff still coming in. The shop from other units, that had bullet holes in the radiators, and so I learned a lot from that. However, towards the end of my time there, I ended up being the what do you call it, first sergeant, I guess, because I was the highest ranking non-com.
Right.
So I had to assume the duties of first sergeant of the company, and even though there was only about 30 of us left there, and I turned it over to a buck sergeant because they sent me onto a R&R, they called it, up at a little town of Atami, on the side of a mountain, a hotel with a hot springs in the bottom of it.
Right.
Probably 30, 40 feet across, about 4 foot deep, I would say. Water was terribly warm. We got a masseuse, and then to climb the stairs back up was a chore. Sleeping on the ground or on the floor, though, in their pads, that's what they. But I was there for a week, eating American food. Wonderful. Steaks. Genuine eggs, not powdered eggs, genuine eggs in the morning, and things of that sort. And when I got back, I was ready to.
Yeah. Did you do any other sort of traveling around in Japan? Did you go to Tokyo or places like that?
No, I didn't go to Tokyo, but I did a lot of roaming around with a Jeep. We'd sneak off on weekends and make side trips. No, but not to any place that was notable anyway.
Okay.
More or less just to get away from the camp.
Okay. What impression did you develop of the Japanese themselves once you were living among them for a while?
I had mixed feeling. I couldn't get out of the back of my mind corregidor. That stuck with me. And the Owen Stanley Mountain, that trip that those guys, my brother-in-law was in that deal, my wife's brother, and I heard plenty about it afterwards, of course. But at that time, we had sketches. We didn't have full details of what went on, but I found out later what was terrible. And for that reason, to this day, I can't stomach them, or I can't stomach their automobiles.
But you got along with them well enough when you were actually in Japan.
While I was there, and these two that I had working for me, very nice gentlemen, young fellows. I couldn't tolerate their food. They come in a tin box, rice and fish.
Yeah.
like a dang nut. I shouldn't have told them they could heat it up with the acetylene torch. The aroma was terrible.
Yeah.
But I still learned quite a bit from them about this aluminum welding.
Mm-hmm. Now, were you able to use that after you got back home?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So you're in Japan. You finally kind of get into 1946. Finally, it's your turn to go home. How did they get you home?
USS Robin.
What was that?
A big ship and wonderful ship. Come into San Francisco. And I can remember up on deck, looking out the bridge.
Mm-hmm.
It looked to me like it was at sea level. I said, Mike, the closer we got, it ain't gonna work. That stacks up pretty high. Pretty soon, we was only about maybe half a mile from it. Come over the PA system. It'll clear by 30 some odd feet.
Mm-hmm.
Big welcome home sign painted on the rock up there. They took us around through a little river of some sort to a town of Pittsburgh.
Okay.
Pittsburgh. And got us off that ship. Let's see. Put us into barracks. Weaver, a fella I was acquainted with quite corporal that was tending to us, pointing us to bunks and whatnot, telling us where the mess hall was to feed. And Miss Weaver says, "Where's the nearest phone?" Corporal took Weaver to the phone. He gets on the phone and calls a cab. So about 5 of us went to San Francisco. I guess the waterfront. I don't know. But we visited pretty near every bar there was, and got into a mess in one of them. It seems that the Navy and the Marine, or maybe it was the Army and the Marine, couldn't get along. And they started to fight. And first thing you know, here come the shore patrol. And even though we're sitting over there at a table, taking it all in, they was fighting going on pretty good, but they rounded us all up in the paddy wagon. Oh my, most of us was from the same camp where they in this Pittsburgh town. Most of us was from there. And of course, what are you going to do with us? You know, we were kind of an instigator, and he's kind of quite unknown. He was a little older than me, and he knew the ropes.
Right.
This paddy wagon we were in, there's probably 20 of us in there. They had more than one. They had another one there, but this one that we were in was open to the driver. It was up here. We could communicate with him. Weaver gets up there and digs around in his pocket with a $20 bill, American dollar, $20 bill, and waved it at that driver. You know, and the driver looks to see what's going on here. He said, "We're from Barrack so-and-so in Pittsburgh." He drove us right over there and let us off. What a $20 bill will do.
Well, I would have done that anyway.
Oh my, my.
Because I suppose while you're in the service, you have military script most of the time, right? Not even regular cash, but...
I forgot to tell you about that. In Japan, they changed our coin. I mean, our they figured out how many months or days that you'd been in Japan, and you knew how much pay you had got. And that's all that you could change from to their script. American dollars to their script that we was going to use. It just seemed we gambled a lot. Out between the barracks at night, we set up a table and we had a Coke bottle full of gasoline with a wick in it and for light, and we shot crap. I had $800 in American money on this table, and I had it in my pocket. I was pretty lucky that particular time. I'd lost lots of it before and after and everything, but I had that money and I couldn't change it. I put it in an envelope and sent it home. It arrived.
Yep.
It arrived. They would know. As a matter of fact, one of them, I sent a couple of rifles home to my brother, next older brother. I sent him an old Jap rifle that I had acquired, and I stuffed about 300 or 400 into where the clip goes in the magazine, and that gun, and it went to him all right. He got it all right. They didn't have no trouble. They package it up, in wood container.
Right.
So therefore, I did save a little bit.
Right. Now, after you have your event in San Francisco, how quickly do they ship you out?
Oh boy, we was only there maybe 3-4 days, just enough to physical.
Yeah.
And all that stuff, and they wanted to do some work on my teeth, and I don't know how much. Oh yeah, I had injured my back a little bit, and I said, nothing doing. You get me out of this army right now. I'm not staying here for no dental work of any kind. I still, by the way, I still got all my own teeth. They're all still intact.
Yep.
And I'd had enough of the army. And
been a long time since you'd seen your wife or
yeah,
daughter or anything else like that. So yeah.
Yeah, a long time.
So when did you get home?
In April.
Okay, so April 46.
46.
All right.
I moved here in August of 46. It was a 20-foot square garage house with 4 acres of land. Been here 64 years.
I was going to ask how long. So this area will have changed a little bit since you moved in, right?
Has it changed? My word of living. There wasn't any houses across the street.
When you got home, did you go back and work with your father again, or is that going to stay in the family business?
Yes, it was. I couldn't wait to get back to work. It's wonderful. One thing about it, I love my work, and it proved out that I'd hate to give it up right now. Only this old body is not capable of it, because I love my work so well. I worked with my brothers and my sister from 1958 on. It was our business. My father had retired and set up a business for us. And I worked until 1980. I was 60 years old, and I quit my shop. My brothers and my sister, they kept working for, I don't remember, 3 or 4 or 5 years maybe. But I quit at that time. And I had been spending my winters in Florida because of my father's. He was established there, and I just took his place over. And I had, I guess I just I had enough of the public.
Mm-hmm.
And I kept working though. I worked here at home,
Mm-hmm.
and I worked in Florida, and much nicer. Work when you feel like it, and when you didn't feel like it, didn't do nothing.
So were you
fishing?
So would you just work for friends or people you knew, or would you just do
Word of mouth.
Okay.
Word of mouth. In the winter, when I get back down to Florida, there would be at least a half a dozen waiting for me.
Mm-hmm.
We've got this problem. Oh, got to tell you about one in particular, an old vet. I used to take him up to the vet facility in St. Petersburg. I live in Sarasota, and St. Petersburg was the nearest vet facility. This was back a few years, and he was waiting for me to fix the window on his Mercury. Electric window, wouldn't work. And I said, well, why didn't you get it for? Well, they wanted $200 to fix it, he says. And I said, well, gee, yeah, but I said, how'd you get along? He says, without the window. He says, oh, that ain't hard. He says, it was down and it wouldn't go up. That worked all right. But he says, I got to tell you the story about the reason to go across this Skyway Bridge to get to St. Pete.
Mm-hmm.
He says, I had to pull up to this is in the summertime, I wasn't there, He says, you have to pull up to the toll booth. So he pulls up there, and at that time, the window was up, and it wouldn't go down. So he had to open the door. He opened the door, and he says, that lady that was a toll booth person, must have pushed the button, the panic button. She'd been robbed the week before from somebody that was pulled up there and opened the door and got out. And she thought it was going to happen again. And little Louis, you're only 5'2", I think it was. He says it wasn't 5 minutes, and he heard the sirens. They were coming from both ways. She must have a relay of some kind to warn those people. And he says, honest, he says, I felt so bad to think that she thought she was being robbed, and the police came, and of course they shut down both ways. It was a mess. And he says, I got to get that fixed, but I got to wait till Leo gets here to do it.
Wow.
And I ended up, of course, I did work for him, for Louis. I didn't charge nothing because he's an exceptionally friend of mine and do the work, that kind of work. And he ended up just about 5 years ago, we lost him. Doggone Alzheimer's business went kaput.
Yeah. All right. Now, for yourself, if you kind of think back to the time that you spent in the service, how do you think that experience affected you? Had you learned from it, or were you any different when you came out than when you went in?
I learned from it. There's no question about that. I learned from it. And no, I wasn't any different. I still liked to work. I still didn't want to go to college. I just didn't want to take advantage of the GI Bill. I just wanted to go back to a shop and go to work. And that part, I still think it was the right thing to do. My father tried to send me to college when I got out of high school. And I said, nothing doing, Pa, I want to go to work. Of course, got married. I had a girlfriend then and got married later. And I said, I like to tinker with these cars. My oldest brother broke me in at the shop down there, working on a 37, 36 or 7 Cord, front wheel drive Cord automobile. I was a gopher, I suppose, you know, whatever. And I had a good time doing it, though. There was a company here in town, typewriter company. Yeah, I was going to tell you the name and it left me. Anyways, their son, he had bought him this Cord convertible, a green one, but the front wheels, that front wheel drive was all messed up. I learned quite a lot on that, working on that thing. That was quite an experience. And the biggest experience was going with him on and road testing it. Wonderful experience, except he scared me half to death. Dunn was the name of the company.
Okay.
Dunn Typewriter Company in Grand Rapids.
All right. All right. Well, the whole thing makes for a pretty good story. So I just like this makes for a good story. So I would just like to close out here by thanking you for taking the time to tell it to me today.
Yeah, yeah.
All right.